Bare dirt. 2 weeks of twice daily watering, not a single green blade showing. Your neighbor stares at his lawn in disbelief, a $50 bag of seed sitting empty by the fence. However, planted the same day, just 20 feet away, pre-germinated seed is already pushing green sprouts through the soil in under 24 hours. So why did identical seed, identical soil, identical weather produce completely opposite results? The answer is a paint strainer bag, a 5-gallon bucket, and 24 hours of water. That is the entire secret. This is not some new gardening hack invented by a YouTube channel. Farmers have known this trick for centuries. Seed companies, the ones selling you replacement bags every failed season, would rather you never hear about it. Side-by-side proof exists. Indoor flats and outdoor beds, seed that survived an October snowstorm in Minnesota and still came up green. The gap between a bare patch and a lush lawn is not better seed or better soil. It is one simple step taken before you ever touch the ground. Most people follow the instructions on the bag. Broadcast the seed, rake it in lightly, water twice a day, wait. The bag says 7 to 14 days for germination, so they wait. And water, and wait. Then life happens. One afternoon gets busy. One evening the sprinkler gets skipped. One hot July wind blows across a sandy front yard for 6 hours straight. The soil surface, which was barely damp to begin with, dries to pale dust in under an hour. And just like that, the window closes. The seed that was on the edge of breaking dormancy gets pushed back to zero, or worse, it dies mid-process, having spent its stored energy on a germination attempt it could not finish. Here is what the bag does not tell you. Grass seed in soil is not just sitting there waiting for a calendar date. It is in a race against moisture loss. The moment a seed begins absorbing water, an internal clock starts ticking. Enzymes activate. The seed coat begins to soften. A tiny root tip starts forming deep inside the hull. But if that seed dries out before the root tip breaks through, the process does not pause. It collapses. The seed has to start over, if it survives at all. Hot sun pulls surface moisture out of topsoil in under an hour on a dry day. Wind accelerates that loss dramatically. Sandy or loamy soils drain fast and hold almost nothing near the surface, exactly where freshly broadcast seed is sitting. Clay soils hold moisture longer but can crust over, sealing the seed off from the air it also needs. There is almost no soil type that makes this easy. You can have perfect seed, perfect timing, and a perfectly prepared seed bed, and a single afternoon of neglect can erase all of it. The real enemy is not bad seed. It is not bad soil. It is that brutal first-week moisture gap, the period when the seed is most vulnerable, and the environment is least forgiving. Seed companies know this. They have known it for decades. But their business model is built on selling volume. A homeowner who reseeds a bare patch 3 times a season buys 3 bags. A homeowner who gets it right the first time buys 1. The math is not complicated. And the marketing language on those bags, words like improved coating and enhanced germination technology, is designed to make you feel like the product is solving the problem, even when it is not. The coating buys you maybe an extra hour of surface moisture retention, 1 hour. Against a 6-hour July wind, that is not a solution, that is a delay. The catalyst is always the same moment. You are standing over a patch of bare dirt that should be green by now, the sun already hot on the back of your neck, the soil cracked and pale at the surface, and you realize the system you were sold was never designed to guarantee your success. It was designed to keep you coming back. That moment of recognition is the beginning of everything that follows. Pre-germination's earliest recorded use would later become the exact thing that defined modern lawn success. But in ancient agricultural practice, it was just farmers soaking grain seed overnight before planting to get a head start on the growing season. The concept is disarmingly simple. Pre-germination means you start the germination process in water, outside of soil, before a single seed ever touches the ground. You are not planting a dormant seed and hoping the soil provides the right conditions. You are handing the seed everything it needs to wake up in a controlled environment and then planting it only after it has already begun to grow. Here is what happens inside the seed the moment it contacts water. Enzymes activate almost immediately. These are the same biological triggers that would fire in soil, but in soil they depend on consistent moisture being present at exactly the right moment. In water, that trigger is guaranteed. The seed coat, the hard outer shell that protects the embryo, begins to soften and swell. Water penetrates the hull and reaches the embryo directly. Cellular respiration kicks in. The seed shifts from dormancy to active biological growth. You can feel the difference if you pick up a seed after 12 hours of soaking. It is heavier, slightly swollen. The surface has lost that dry, papery rattle it had coming out of the bag. Within the first 12 hours, internal chemistry is already changing. Starches convert to sugars to fuel the emerging root. Proteins restructure. The embryo begins to elongate. None of this is visible yet from the outside, but the process is fully underway. This is the stage where soil-planted seed most often fails, because the soil environment is not reliably wet enough, long enough to sustain this chemistry without interruption. A single dry afternoon is enough to break the chain. One missed watering, 1 hour of direct wind, the seed was doing everything right, and then the environment stopped cooperating, and the seed paid the price. Then, somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, depending on seed variety and water temperature, something visible happens. A tiny white root tip, called the radicle, breaks through the seed coat. It is barely a millimeter long. It looks almost insignificant. But that white tip is the single most important signal in this entire process. Once the radicle emerges, the seed is committed. It is no longer dormant. It is a living, actively growing plant. It cannot go back to dormancy. It cannot wait. It must be planted promptly, within hours of that tip appearing, or it will exhaust its stored energy and die. But if you plant it at exactly that moment, you are putting a seed into the ground that has already cleared the most dangerous biological hurdle. The soil no longer needs to provide perfect moisture for germination to begin. Germination has already begun. The soil just needs to sustain what is already in motion, which is a dramatically lower bar. This is why the 24-hour visual difference exists. Conventional seed planted in soil on a Monday is still waiting for soil moisture to trigger germination by Wednesday. Pre-germinated seed planted on Monday already had its germination triggered in water on Sunday. By Tuesday morning, it is not germinating. It is growing. The technique is not new, not even close. Farmers in Asia have soaked rice seed before transplanting for over 3,000 years. European grain farmers soaked wheat and barley before spring planting as a standard practice well before modern agriculture industrialized the process. The knowledge did not disappear. It got buried under the convenience economy of pre-packaged seed bags and marketing language about improved seed coatings and polymer treatments that supposedly do the same thing. They do not do the same thing. A polymer coating slows moisture loss slightly. Pre-germination eliminates the moisture dependency problem entirely during the most critical window. One is a bandage, the other is a solution. The equipment required is almost insultingly basic. A 5-gallon bucket available at any hardware store for under $5. A paint strainer bag, the kind used for straining latex paint, which costs roughly $2 at a home improvement store. Water from a tap. That is the complete list. No grow lights, no heat mats, no specialized germination chambers, no expensive seed starting mix. A bucket, a bag, and water. The process works indoors on a workbench in January. It works outdoors in a shaded spot in July. It worked in documented side-by-side trials where one half of a lawn patch was seeded conventionally and the other half was seeded with pre-germinated seed on the same day, with the same soil preparation, the same watering schedule afterward. The pre-germinated side showed visible green growth in under 24 hours after planting. The conventional side showed nothing for 9 days. Same seed variety, same everything. One variable changed. It even survived an October cold snap in Minnesota, where overnight temperatures dropped below freezing within 48 hours of planting. The pre-germinated seed had already established enough root contact with the soil to survive the freeze. The conventionally seeded area in the same yard showed almost zero germination that season. The window closed before the seed ever woke up. Everything was in place. The seed just didn't know what everything was building toward. But this wasn't just about the seed anymore. The real question was whether the timing of that white root tip, that single millimeter of emerging radical, could be controlled precisely enough to make this method reliable for any homeowner in any season with any grass variety. The hardware store is quiet on a Tuesday morning. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. A man walks the aisles with a short list and less than $10 in his pocket. The stakes, at this moment, feel almost embarrassingly low. He finds the first item in the paint department. A 5-gallon bucket. Orange, plastic, the kind that sits in every garage in America. The price tag reads $4.78. He picks it up with one hand. It weighs almost nothing. He sets it in his cart and keeps moving. This is not a specialized piece of equipment. This is not something you order online and wait 2 weeks for. This is the same bucket a contractor uses to mix grout, the same bucket a kid uses to build sandcastles, the same bucket that has been sitting in the back of your shed since 2019. The second item is harder to find, not because it is rare, because nobody thinks to look for it. It is a paint strainer bag, a fine mesh sleeve, roughly the size of a pillowcase, designed to filter lumps out of paint before it goes into a roller tray. Under $2, usually sold in packs of 2 or 3 near the roller covers and drop cloths. The average homeowner has never bought one. The average homeowner has never needed one. But here is what that bag actually does in this system. It sits inside the bucket. You fold the top edge over the rim, and it holds itself open. The seed goes inside the bag. The water flows freely through the mesh in every direction. And when you need to lift the seed out, you grab the bag, not the bucket. You do not pour. You do not scoop. You do not lose half your seed down a drain. The bag contains everything. It allows everything. It costs less than a cup of coffee. The third item is the seed itself. For this demonstration, the choice is Jonathan Green Black Beauty Ultra, a premium tall fescue blend widely available at garden centers and big box stores across the northeastern United States. Jonathan Green has been in the seed business since 1881. That is not a typo. 140 plus years of breeding, testing, and refining cool season grass varieties. Black Beauty Ultra specifically is engineered for deep root development, drought resistance, and a dark green color that holds through summer stress. It is not the cheapest seed on the shelf. It is also not the most expensive. It sits in the middle of the market, around $65 to $75 for a 50-pound bag, depending on retailer and region. But here is the critical point. This method does not require that specific seed. It works with any grass seed. Tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, fine fescue blends. The pre-germination process is seed agnostic. Jonathan Green Black Beauty Ultra is simply what was used in this particular demonstration, and it performed exactly as expected. The fourth item is water. Plain water, tap water. The water that comes out of your garden hose or your kitchen faucet, no additives, no fertilizer, no rooting hormone, no kelp extract, no proprietary germination booster sold in a small bottle for $22 at the garden center, just water. The chemistry of germination does not require anything dissolved in that water. The seed needs hydration to trigger the enzymatic processes that break dormancy. Plain water delivers that hydration. Anything added to the water introduces variables that are not necessary and may, in some cases, interfere with the process. Keep it simple. Keep it plain. There are 2 optional items worth mentioning. The first is a second 5-gallon bucket. You do not need it for the initial soak phase. You will want it for the dunking phase that follows. Having a second bucket with fresh water already prepared makes the every 12-hour maintenance step faster and cleaner. The second optional item is a timer. Your phone works perfectly. Set 2 alarms, 12 hours apart. Label them. Do not rely on memory. The timing in this process is not approximate. It is precise. Missing a window by 4 or 5 hours in the wrong direction has consequences that compound quickly, and by the time you notice, it is already too late to recover cleanly. The total cost of this setup, excluding the seed itself, lands somewhere between $6 and $8. 2 buckets, 1 strainer bag. That is the entire physical infrastructure of a method that consistently outperforms broadcast seeding, hydro seeding on small scales, and sod installation in terms of cost per square foot of established turf. The equipment is not the story. The equipment is just the container for the story. Up to this point, the seed had been winning. That was about to flip. The bucket is on a garage floor. The paint strainer bag is folded over the rim. The seed is measured and ready. The timer on a phone is set but not yet started. This is the moment the process actually begins, and everything that follows depends on what happens in the next 24 hours. The seed goes into the bag first. How much seed depends entirely on the size of the area being treated. A small bare patch, say 4 feet by 6 feet, might require only a cup or 2 of seed. A larger renovation covering several hundred square feet will require proportionally more. The method scales without modification. The ratio of seed to water does not need to be calculated. The bag simply needs enough room that the seed is not packed so tightly that water cannot circulate through it. A loose, even layer inside the bag is the target. Not a compressed brick of seed, not a thin single layer either. Somewhere in the middle, with room for the water to move freely through every part of the mass. Water goes in next, cold water from the tap. The bucket fills until the seed is fully submerged, with at least an inch or 2 of water above the top of the seed mass. The seed will float at first. This is normal, this is expected. The seed floats because of trapped air inside the seed coat. As the hydration process begins, that air is displaced and the seed gradually sinks over the first few hours. If you check the bucket 30 minutes after setup and see floating seed, do not interpret that as a failure. Do not add weight to push it down. Leave it. The process is already working. Because what is actually happening inside that bucket in those first hours is not visible to the naked eye. The seed coat is absorbing water. The moisture content inside the seed is rising from its dormant level, which in a properly stored grass seed is typically somewhere between 8 and 12% toward the threshold required to activate the embryo. That threshold varies by species. For tall fescue, the process is well documented. For Kentucky bluegrass, it takes longer, which is why bluegrass is notoriously slow to germinate under conventional conditions. The pre-soak compresses that timeline by front-loading the hydration that would otherwise happen slowly and inconsistently in the soil. You are not cheating the biology. You are giving the biology exactly what it needs, without the interference of an unpredictable outdoor environment. Pay attention to this next detail, because it explains everything. The 24-hour window is not arbitrary. It is not a round number chosen for convenience. Research on grass seed germination, including work published through university extension programs at institutions like Penn State and Rutgers, consistently identifies the first 24 hours of water contact as the period during which the seed undergoes imbibition, the technical term for the initial water uptake phase. Cutting this phase short to 12 hours leaves the seed partially hydrated. Extending it beyond 36 hours without the dunking protocol that follows begins to create anaerobic conditions around the seed, which can promote fungal activity and reduce viability. 24 hours is the window, not 20, not 30, 24. The bucket needs to stay out of direct sunlight during this phase. A garage floor works, a shaded porch works, a basement works. The reason is straightforward. Direct sunlight heats the water. Water temperature above roughly 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit accelerates microbial activity in the bucket and can stress the seed before it has completed imbibition. Room temperature water, somewhere between 60 and 70 degrees, is the target environment. This is not a precise laboratory condition. It is a general guideline that most indoor or shaded outdoor spaces will naturally satisfy without any intervention. The timer matters more than most people expect. Set it for 24 hours from the moment the bucket is filled. Label the alarm. Write it on a piece of tape stuck to the bucket if necessary. The transition from the soak phase to the dunking phase is time-sensitive, and the consequences of missing that window are not immediately obvious. The seed will not look different at hour 26 versus hour 24. It will not send a signal. It will not change color. The only signal that matters comes later, and by the time it arrives, you need to already be in the correct phase of the process. This is the part where most people who attempt pre-germination without guidance get it wrong. Not because the method is complicated, because they assume the seed will tell them when it is ready. It will not. The clock tells you. Trust the clock. The phone alarm goes off. 24 hours have passed. The seed has been sitting in that bucket, submerged in a dark garage, completely unattended. From the outside, nothing appears to have changed. The water is slightly cloudy. The seed has sunk to the bottom of the bag. There is a faint, clean smell, something like wet earth and green wood, rising from the bucket when you lean over it. There is no dramatic visual evidence that anything significant has occurred, but something has, something irreversible. The seed has crossed a threshold it cannot uncross. The embryo is active. The clock is running. And from this point forward, the seed is no longer in a dormant state waiting for conditions to improve. It is in a live state, actively progressing toward germination, and it now requires a specific sequence of events to complete that progression successfully. Miss the next step, and everything you have done up to this point unravels in a matter of hours, not days, hours. Lift the bag from the bucket slowly. The mesh is heavy now, dripping, the seed clinging together in a pale, swollen mass. Hold it over the bucket for 30 seconds and let the excess water drain completely. The seed should feel firm, slightly tacky, nothing like the dry, papery texture it had coming out of the bag at the store. Set the bag down on a clean surface and look closely. You are looking for the radicle, that white tip. That single millimeter of root, that means the seed has already done the hardest part of the work. If you see it, you are already late. Plant immediately. Every hour you wait after the radicle appears is an hour the seedling is burning through stored energy with no soil to replenish it. The root tip is fragile at this stage. It breaks easily. It desiccates in minutes if exposed to dry air. Handle the seed gently, broadcast it with a light touch, and get it into contact with moist soil as quickly as your hands will allow. Press it lightly into the surface. Do not rake aggressively. Do not bury it deep. The radicle needs to find the soil, not fight through it. Every second you spend adjusting your technique is a second that root tip is exposed to open air. Move with purpose. If you do not see the radicle yet, you are exactly on schedule. The dunking phase begins now, and what happens in the next 12 hours will determine whether everything you have done up to this point pays off or collapses in the soil before it ever has a chance to show you what it could have become. The dunking phase is simple in execution and critical in purpose. Lift the bag, drain it completely, lower it into the second bucket of fresh, room temperature water, hold it submerged for 30 seconds, lift it again, drain it again, set it back in the original bucket without refilling. The seed is now surrounded by fresh oxygen and a thin film of water clinging to every surface. This cycle, dunk and drain every 12 hours, prevents the anaerobic conditions that would otherwise develop as the seed's respiration consumes the dissolved oxygen in standing water. It keeps the environment aerobic. It keeps the seed alive and progressing. It takes less than 2 minutes each time. What you are doing in those 2 minutes is replacing the oxygen the seed has already consumed with fresh air and rinsing away the carbon dioxide and metabolic byproducts that have been building up in the water around the seed mass. Left unchecked, those byproducts create an environment that mimics waterlogging, the same condition that kills grass roots in a flooded lawn. The dunk and drain cycle is the difference between a controlled germination environment and a slow drowning. The seed cannot tell you which one it is experiencing. The smell can. If the bucket develops a sour or sulfurous odor between cycles, the anaerobic process has already begun. Increase the frequency of dunking to every 8 hours and replace the water in the second bucket entirely. That smell is a warning. Do not ignore it. The same process that built the seed's momentum toward germination was about to become its greatest threat. Dunk, drain, watch. As of today, your lawn wins. This story isn't over.